Hello. Hello, Instagram. I've got some news for you guys. I've been working on a decryption for about 6 years with an entire team that we had cracked part of it before, but we finally got to crack all of it. And so, well, maybe not all. There's always layers that we haven't yet figured out. But I'm going to share this with you, and I've got someone who's going to join me as well, who actually I have a podcast out with today, and his name is Rob Comber. And so he's just going to come on here any minute now, and it'll show up. So you just have to request Rob if you're on. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'll show you a little preview of what I'm talking about here. This is a very famous wood etch that is by a fellow by the name of Albrecht Dürer. I wish there was a way to share screen on this, but we don't have that on Instagram Live, so I'm going to have to basically do it this way with you. But Albrecht Dürer in 1514 made this very famous wooden etch called Melancholia, which I've been trying to crack for years, literally years, because we knew it had all kinds of bizarre symbolism in it and stuff, and felt also that it was going to have some deep significance to what we're dealing with today. Albrecht Dürer was a polymath from the early 16th century. He was a contemporary of Leonardo da Vinci, also studied the mystery schools, and was taught geometry by Luca Pacioli, who wrote the book with Leonardo da Vinci called Divina Proporzione. So I'm going to wait for Rob to come on, and then we're going to take you through this. See if we can find you. Okay, Rob, you're still not there. Let me see. He's never done this before, so just 1 second. I'm going to try to... Okay. Cool. My haircut is snazzy. Okay. Well, you guys are going to laugh when I tell you this one, but guess who cuts my hair? I do. I cut my own hair. How did I end up cutting my own hair in my life? Well, the way that happened was because I used to live in Tokyo, Japan. And when I'd lived in Japan, I learned Japanese. I speak Japanese. But I had to learn the words for, like, how I wanted my haircut done. But then no matter how I told them how I wanted my haircut done, I would look like everybody else coming out of the barbershop, the exact same thing. And it got so frustrating. And plus, it was this whole thing where there was this massive line to get the barbershop, and I just did not like to go to Japanese barbershop. So I lived in Japan for 2 years. So I, at that time, asked my ex-wife to cut my hair. And so she would do it. We had this really big shower. She would cut my hair. And then after we got divorced, so she cut my hair for years, and it was so nice because I could be like, oh, I've got a meeting tomorrow. Can you cut my hair again? And thankfully, she was very kind and she allowed that to go on. And then we got divorced, and that became a real issue because I was like, uh-oh, what am I going to do now to cut my hair? I have to start going to barbershops again. And then I thought maybe I'll just learn through trial and error how to cut it myself. So, and it was just as a practical matter. It was so just as a practical matter because I just couldn't be bothered to go to get a proper haircut. And I had a lot of trial and error, and I messed up many times. And then finally, I learned how to do it. And so, yeah, you just take a pair of scissors and you hold your hair. So it's kind of a quirky thing about me that I probably saved about $1 million in my lifetime of cutting my own hair now. And it's like people that say, oh, you should self-insure, instead of getting car insurance through something else or someone else. I just started doing it myself, I guess. And I probably saved a ton of money as a result of it. So for people that wonder, there you go. That is my answer. Now let's see if Rob responded back to me yet. All right, so he's responded, so it should be on here. Rob Comber. You get your daughter to cut yours. Well, there you go. You understand then. Okay, looks like he's
Hey,
here. Rob,
hey,
how are
how we doing?
you?
Yeah, so good, so good. How you
We've
doing?
been we got to stop doing this. We've been like meeting like this for the last few days. You know, it's like you're my resident expert on astrology and all things related to, you know, kind of the stars and how that plays such a significant role in our lives, and maybe we haven't been aware of it until now.
Mhm.
But definitely we've been working a lot together the last days and the last
Mm.
weeks. And you know, from what we did together on the whole Ark of the Covenant, which shows up in the podcast that just landed today, in fact. And that's really, really a cool thing that literally happened real time between us, you know, in a couple of hours of talking. And then now Melancholia, which was a wood etch that I've been trying to crack for a long time. And I don't even know why it came up. How do we even start talking about this?
But that's what I was going to say, because we've been speaking so much about the stars and the cosmology. And yesterday, when you were just like we were speaking about that, somehow I think you just had a flash of inspiration. And I think this is something that perhaps people don't know so much about these conversations, that it's not just, even though we may specialize in a subject, that actually when you're in the as a polymath or interesting in the many learnings, it's just the rabbit hole you just go down. And I think you said something like, oh, this reminds me of this image. And so you said, like, there's this beautiful artwork image that you've been trying to crack. And I'm like, I've never even seen this thing before. So that kind of just started the process of the enigma.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it did, and so I think we go ahead and jump into it because it's so interesting, and maybe the process also. You know, how would you describe this process of these intuitive bursts that you know we both get? And I think this is helpful probably to a certain extent for people that have not experienced that yet, or maybe just wondering how these things come to us and why we focus on certain things and not others.
And that's a question. Yeah, I think it's that willingness to go with the moment. So whatever, and sometimes these rabbit holes that you go down, like you come up empty quite a lot, right? So you could say in that discovery that we've done, it's like, well, you could probably come up empty-handed most of the time, but actually that you don't even see it as like a failure. You just see like, okay, that's the end of that thread. There's this other thread. And so I just love the fact that there's no sort of sense of I'm not achieving the goal here. It's just that it's like, oh, I've reached the end of that puzzle piece. And then you get the excitement of like, there's another direction. So yeah, I just think I think it's the joy of knowing that these great wisdom keepers have encoded these artworks. And I think that's so different now to nowadays, in art, it's not so much encoded with that esoteric wisdom. So to go back into these enigmas of the ancients that really, I mean, it's brilliant. What they did is just beyond brilliant. And then they've sort of left that for us to dive into. But yeah, in terms of this, the Melancholia, if nobody's seen it, Melancholia 1, it for me, it started with the magic square. That
Yeah.
was that was the key. As soon as I saw the picture you showed me, I was like, the first thing I go to is the magic square, because I've done a lot of work with magic squares because they're connected to astrology.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, like a 3 by 3 or a 9 cube magic square is connected to Saturn.
Hmm.
And so a 4 by 4 is connected to Jupiter. A 5 by 5 is connected to Mars. And so they go up and they're all connected to different planets. So as soon as I saw that magic square, which you can see on the screen, is I was like, whatever it is, that's what the person in the frame is pondering. That's the key. So that's kind of how I started with it. And then you found this sort of piece of the 5 6 as we were adding it up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, let's take everyone through this. So, first of all, just to orient everybody, you can see my cursor here, but you also can see my finger probably. So, this is supposed to be a wooden etch, and this wooden etch has a lot of detail in it, including a geometric solid that we see nowhere else. That is kind of bizarre, with the shape of Superman's, you know, logo on it right here, and you'll see that that becomes very important in just a moment. but then also this magic square, a strange kind of like hourglass right here, and then a balance and scale, which is kind of like with Libra, and a bell up here, and then this ladder, which often might be a reference to Jacob's ladder, and it has 7 rungs on the ladder, like for the 7 chakras. It has a rainbow over here, and the sun creating something that looks like a 90-degree angle right here as well. So we're trying to figure out what could all of this mean. There's also a face on the side of this irregular pentagon, right? And this angel looks decidedly non-gender specific. So it is believed to be the angel Metatron, which is supposed to be hermaphroditic, both masculine and feminine. And then it looks like there's a cherub that's sitting next to him, and the cherub also looks kind of sad. They look melancholic, don't they? They look kind of sad.
Yeah.
And then you can also see that he's holding a compass, and that seems to be telling us something. And he's got these obviously angelic wings. So this is believed to be the angel Metatron, and we don't know much else about it. And then there's this strange dog right here as well,
Mm.
right? Which is also telling us something else. I believe that there's probably going to be some more to this encryption or decryption, and that the dog itself is probably related to Sirius, the star, the dog star. And Metatron is very much associated with Orion. And this diamond pentagon is also associated with Orion's constellation. So let's just keep going into this.
Yeah. So with when you told me, you were like, have you ever seen this? And I said, no, I've never seen it before. And then that's when you said, like, I've been trying to crack this for like 6 years, this whole image. And I was like, oh, okay, let's have a go. Let's see what we can find. And yeah, let's say it was the magic square of how you add up the magic square that started to give us the first key.
Well, that's right. And one of the things I had posted on about 5 years ago was this right here, that I had actually figured out how to draw it with Metatron's cube, right? And so this is the geometric form that I was calling the Durahedron, that you could use Metatron's cube in order to derive it. And strangely, it was also matching the logo that I had, right? So that's probably one of the reasons why this was something that so deeply resonated with me. And I didn't even know consciously at that time, right, that that was the case. So basically, this is the Durahedron. It's a geometric solid made of irregular pentagons. And this also led me to create and to download the grantahedron, which includes irregular pentagon sides. So it has 16 sides and 8,640 sum of angles degree. And then in addition, it has like 8 diamond shaped pentagons and 8 regular pentagons. And so the diamond pentagon that I was using was interesting because it had a one side that was 1, so 3 sides that are a value of 1 unit, and the the fourth and fifth sides were 1.618 golden ratio. And so that closed the geometric form for the grantahedron, which you can find on my website also. And then this shape shows up in other places as well, right? Because it shows up also in the Great Pyramid, where you can see this is the bull that's on the north wall inside the king's chamber. And you can also see the horns here, right? And you can see it traced out here. And it has on top of it the exact same Durahedron,
Mhm.
which is kind of bizarre. You can see right here the line coming down and the line coming here. There should be no straight lines on this wall, and yet there are. And there's even some writing here that we can't quite make it out. But here's a diamond shape right here, and then an inverted diamond that's black. So it's like white and black showing up. Okay. So one of the first things we looked at was also this clock. And the
Mm.
clock basically was showing that the clock was showing a time on it, right? That's a sundial. And so we're looking at this and saying, okay, what is this, right? What could this possibly be? And by the way, this is the same thing on the walls in the king's chamber. You can see here the bull right here, and then here's the same diamond pentagon, and then an inverted diamond pentagon, and then a cow, which we believe to represent Apis bull and Hathor on the wall of the. So that's the north wall in the king's chamber. And also we found on the same wall in the Last Supper painting a cow and a bull in the exact same spot. And even right here, it's not written out, but you can see an A, Q, W, which is Alpha Chi Omega. Omega is a lowercase w.
Yeah.
So this is the Alpha Omega from the King's Chamber sarcophagus as well. And I had measured out the angular reference of the Omega because it almost looked like a head and shoulders. And so what's the angle? Well, they're both golden, right? You've got the 137 and a half, which is the golden angle, and 222 and a half degrees on the other side, right?
Yeah.
So then we also found that someone had, this guy, Ernst Theodor Mayer, had discovered that using this magic square that's embedded into this wood etch, it also encodes the exact same shape of the Durahedron, which is right here.
And we didn't even know about this
No, we
until
didn't.
we've completed it.
That's right.
Which
So
is,
the magic square, maybe that's been the whole magic of it. So I decided, okay, is it possible that the King's Chamber sarcophagus might be encoding the exact same angle as what is on the Albrecht Dürer wood etch? And let's have a look. And so now you'll see, here's the wood etch, here's the angle, and then you'll see the sarcophagus omega, which has the exact same angular reference right here, going straight up to this point. Yeah, it's 137. So
yeah.
137, if you don't know 137 and the golden angle or its relationship to physics, is the fine structure constant. But here, there's also an A shape. It looks like a torus on its side, right in the center. And then you've got the omega encrypted right within it. So alpha omega is actually encrypted into this clock.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And I think the thing to look at is that what is on the etching at the moment is an upside down part of the clock. And there's only a tiny part of that. And so this is where you have to become sort of creative. And it was like we put the circle round to make a whole clock. And then that's how you can derive the golden angle. And so it's almost like I say these things aren't always obvious. You fail many times, and then you find that, well, if it's a clock, it has to be the full circle, and then from that you can find the right angles.
Yeah, and then we looked at the compass, and the compass drawn in perspective was giving us exactly an equilateral triangle relationship, which of course is a reference to the philosopher's stone. And you can see the toe of the baby is anchoring the upper part of the square. Now, these are encrypted for a reason. But the reason why this is cool is because if you look at this line right here, it's right down the center point. There's a line that goes down the center of the compass, and there's another line that goes right down the center of this arm of the compass, and that makes a perfect equilateral triangle. Like, wow, epic.
Yeah, those sort of clues, like when there's a specific like thing like a compass, you know the artist would have done it with such perfection because that's one of the main points of the encoding.
Yeah. And so then you came and said, well, wait a minute. What about this sun right here? It seems weird. Like it seems to be making what looks like a right angle to the ground. So then
Yeah,
what I did is I said, okay, well, let's have a look at this and let's see what the proportion is. So if I took the center point, so you take the highest point of the rainbow and then you anchor that as this line right here. So that's the highest point on the rainbow. And it comes right down here to the center point. Is the distance here to here, so this radius, is that equal to 1/2 of the rainbow's arc coming all the way out to this circle? And it turns out it is. It's exactly 1/2. So it'd be like 1/2, and then this would be a radius of 1. Well, what's interesting about this is encoding and then taking a radius of that circle around like this is informing for us a rectangle that would be tangent to the rainbow on both sides. And that tangency is creating a rectangle that's a 2-to-1 rectangle. Now, a 2-to-1 rectangle is important because it references what? The Great Pyramid's King's Chamber, which is exactly a 2-to-1 rectangle. And it's just to be sure about that, so there's no question about that. Even the height from floor to ceiling is exactly 1/2 of the square root of 5, which is the diameter, right? Or rather, it would be that would be half of the diagonal right here. So from this point to right here would be, if this is 1 and this is 2, from here to here is going to be 1/2 of the square root of 5, or 1.118. And that's the floor to ceiling measurement. So the King's Chamber perfectly encodes exactly the 2-to-1 rectangle. And it's about going to the next octave of experience.
Doubling the octave, yeah.
Right.
And I was just
So go ahead.
That, for example, like, so there's a compass that's drawn in the picture. Well, as we know, there's the sort of the relationship is that there should be a square of 90 degrees somewhere else. And so that's what the sun is offering. So it's like, when you know these relationships between like the square and compass, then you're looking for it's other, right, in the picture somewhere. And so then that's what the sun is providing, and then that's what allowed this whole like 2-to-1 ratio to form.
Yeah, exactly. So all that happened was, you see the line of the sun right here, and I'll try to go back to the picture so you can see it without that.
Yeah, just so
Again,
people see the 90 degrees.
yeah, you can see it right here.
Mm-hmm.
So then if this is 1/2 of the square side, right, you extend it down here to have a full square, and then the square would come all the way up to be totally tangent with the rainbow. So now you know it's intentional. It's absolutely intentional, and it's telling us something more, right? And that's exactly the point, that it's telling us about this proportion that is inherent to the King's Chamber. Then all I did was put in the line at the horizon, which,
Yeah.
of course, the line at the horizon is exactly where there's an intersection of that same square, right, with the horizon line.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Well, a lot of people don't know this, but I had discovered a way using the 2-to-1 rectangle to construct a pentagon in order to construct the perfect Metatron's cube. So Metatron's cube, most people think of it, they've read it in
Flower of
Drumble
life.
and Melchizedek's book, the secrets of the ancient secrets of flower of life. But actually, it doesn't make a perfect dodecahedron, nor does it make a perfect icosahedron. You can't make a perfect icosidodecahedron using the standard Metatron's cube. So I had been challenged on this point by this other geometer that basically has this group called New Geometry, and he's actually quite good in geometry, and George Leoniak is his name,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a great guy. But he was like, look, you can't use Metatron's cube to be able to construct a perfect dodecahedron in a 3-dimensional view of perspective geometry. And I was like, I know you can. I absolutely know you can. And so I figured out in one day how you could construct it that way and come up with the perfect relationship of golden ratio that is necessary in geometry to do that, and to make that perfect dodecahedron, and therefore the perfect icosahedron as well. And the way it's done is just like this. And I actually did a video on this, where the way you have to do it is you have to first draw a pentagon, right? Or you could start with the King's Chamber, the green line, which then gives you the perfect separation or the perfect integration of the 5 and 6 relationship. So one way to do it is to draw a circle, inscribe a pentagon within it, and then inscribe a circle within that, and then draw a hexagon within that circle. And then the place where you connect Metatron's cube is from the inner hexagon to the outer triangle that is in the outer circle. You could do it by simply drawing the King's Chamber in the green right here, and then taking that and extending it from the where it touches, it becomes tangent to this circle right here. It becomes tangent to this circle right here. So then that gives you the mark on the distance that has to be this space right here in order to create this perfect dodecahedral relationship that gives us the perfect golden ratio proportions of the distance of the dodecahedron. This is a pentagon right here versus the length right here. So this length has to be 0.618033988 from here to here versus the length from here to here. And that's a pentagon right inside there. And the one that is in a standard Metatron's cube does not do that. It doesn't give you the perfect relationship. And so for people that are really into this stuff, that's kind of important because it doesn't look perfectly three-dimensional. But this way it does. And so what this does, it creates a Metatron's cube that looks like those interwoven Star of Davids, right? Where it's got a line here and a line on the outside here. So it's got this band on both. And the thickness is then predetermined by the thickness of this space in between the two circles that inscribe and then have the pentagon inscribed within it, which is orange, and then the circle that inscribes within that.
Yeah.
So the metaphor is that the pentagon represents the microcosm, the macrocosm is the hexagon, but it's also the feminine and the masculine, and the pathos and the logos. So in order for the logos to be well balanced, it has to be within the pentagon. So it has to be inside the heart consciousness. The logos only works when it's inside of already the consciousness of the heart.
That's pretty profound. And I just for people to think about that rectangle, to me it's the same. So it's the same length, but the width is skinnier, right? So it's kind of like instead of it would normally look fatter, and so the actual ratio is like you take like a trim off each side, so the length stays the same, but the width is like a skinny version, and that's the center part of the that's the exact King's Chamber. If you're trying to do the hexagram.
Now, one of the things to notice here is that look at the M. So they so perfectly encrypt this so that you can basically figure it out. But the M is exactly when we place the hexagon inside of this structure of Metatron's cube, the M is exactly the right angle to give you up to its serif, right? All the way through.
That's amazing.
So they're constantly giving us clues, right? They're giving us clues all over the place.
Yeah.
So I had figured out some time ago in my work in DNA that, first of all, the dihedral angle of water is not 108 degrees perfectly. The dihedral angle of water depends on if it's in a vapor state or if it's in a state that is frozen. So you have two different dihedral angles. One is 104.7 degrees, which relates to pi over 3, by the way, which is 1.04719. And so that's one of the dihedral angles of it. But then when you look at it as steam, so that's for like ice. When you look at it for the steam, it's 111 degrees. The average between the two comes out to 108. So what that implies, every time you have a different dihedral angle of water, you have a different state of water. Liquid, solid, gas, right, are the three known states of matter. The fourth would be plasma, right? And then a fifth might be crystal in physics. And so this is kind of interesting because what it's saying is that water has altered states and actually can be adjusted with different dihedral angles to have different states of water. And sometimes Jared Pollack, who is a researcher in water, is a person who has basically defined a new state of water that he calls easy water. It's more like a gel. So if you cut yourself, It's not like, I mean, our bodies are made of 70% water, but if you cut yourself, it's not like you're spilling water out of your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's still sort of like a gel type consistency with a very high degree of surface tension. So what I figured out was that this Durahedron structure is actually hidden, and it does give you the 108-degree angle, and it's actually hidden in the icosidodecahedral structure, which is both the icosahedron and the dodecahedron, and it represents the crown chakra. So the inner lumen is now structuring water in a new phase of water with a perfect 108-degree dihedral angle inside of it. And I had done this quite some time ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I wrote a whole thing on, what this meant from a paper, from a water perspective, and 24-strand DNA. So that 24-strand DNA is activated by this inner lumen of water now being in its holy state. So this is in the state of holy water. And it also has it has light within it when it's in this 108-degree angle. It's matching also the moon. So the moon has a diameter of 2,160 miles, but its radius is 1,080 miles. And so this is matching the moon resonance.
Yeah.
And we know
And
that water on the planet is very much associated not only with feminine archetypes, but also with our tides. And the moon has seemingly a lot of control over water on Earth.
yeah, yeah. I was just
So,
going to say about the sacred mantra in the Vedic system. They always speak about chanting the mantra 108 times to encode the pattern of the mantra into the object or into the ether. So it kind of makes sense, this water and ether, the icosidodecahedron, and it's like the 108 is like this key that they knew about, that was this way of imprinting the codes to affect matter.
absolutely. So this is how 24-strand DNA comes out, because we already know that the dodecahedral matrix of stacked dodecahedra, and the dodecahedron is this shape right here, right? That's the dodecahedron. So imagine these stacked on top of each other, and that makes the geometry of DNA. And it's well known. It's mainstream science. But the thing is, you can't have a dodecahedron without also having its dual solid pairing, which is icosahedron. So that means that the icosahedron will always exist with the dodecahedron. And the icosahedron is the structure of water clusters. We actually have pictures of water clusters that look like little tiny icosahedron, which is like incredible. And even things like viruses. The virus that shall not be named, right? Back from a few years ago, is the shape of a truncated icosahedron. So all of this is to say that the icosahedron is a fundamental part of the construct of the dodecahedron. You simply take the center point of each one of these sides, so from here and here and here and here, and you connect those dots together, and it will make a perfect icosahedron because it's a dual solid, right? The octahedron is the dual solid of a cube. So if you only have dodecahedron there, you've only got a 2-strand DNA, like you can see here, going around. But if you realize that the icosahedron is embedded within the dodecahedron, that you can't have one without the other, then you start to connect the dots of the stellations or the protruding aspects or corners or vertices of them, and it creates a 24-strand DNA when you take that weave in 2 directions.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And I was just going to say about the total sum angles. So for the icosa, we've got the 3,600, and then the dodeca 6,480. So it makes 10,080, which is 108 again.
Yes, that's right. And by the way, this structure of the Durahedron, right, which was encrypted in this wooden etch, has exactly the same sum of angles. It has 6 irregular pentagons, each one 540 degrees, and then 2 triangles, one at the top and one at the base. And together, those all make 3,600, which is identical to the icosahedron. So this is like a related structure to the icosahedron.
And we said that was A sharp,
Yeah.
right? The 3,000.
Comes out to A sharp on the 432 scale.
Mm-hmm.
So I had drawn this as a perception of time, like I called it the Eye of Horus. And of course, it had within it this same proportion of 2-to-1 rectangle of the King's Chamber. And that, again, this is creating the same type of dodecahedral structure of the perfect three-dimensional icosidodecahedron. And that this is related to the crown chakra activation. So now this is the full, completed form of this. So you can see both the icosahedron, which is the triangular sides in three-dimensional look,
Mhm.
and then also you can see behind it, hidden within it, the pentagons of the dodecahedron. So here's a pentagon right here.
Mm.
Here's another pentagon right here. Another one right here. Right, and so this forms what's called the icosahedron. And it's giving us the exact proportions of this by telling us precisely based on this proportion of the king's chamber within it. The king's chamber, all you have to do is you take from the corner of the king's chamber up to the center of the circle. That's going to inform for you right in your inner circle exactly where your Merkaba will be, and then your outer Merkaba is there as well, right? And so basically, it's giving you this exact proportion so that you can nest within this circle a perfect pentagon. So all you do is you take a straight line coming across here, right? And where the bottom of this inner circle is, you have a line that's perpendicular to this central line, and then that defines exactly, right, where you're going to be creating your pentagon from, because where it overlaps this outer circle and then also meets this inner circle right here defines the pentagon length. So this becomes one side, and once you have one side, then you can use your compass to do all the other sides. Very
Uh,
simple.
I was just thinking, this is really interesting. Speaking about Drunvalo in the conversation, I remember a long time ago he said that the actual blueprint, the etheric blueprint for Gaia, was an icosahedron.
Yes,
And
it
so,
is.
if that's then and with this discovery, then essentially this geometry is the center core of the Earth.
That's right. It's going to be
So this.
absolutely related to that and to the ascension of the Earth too.
Mhm.
But what's also interesting is, remember, I just said that this structure of the Durahedron is the structure that fits inside of this structure in the inner lumen. So the placement of all of this is right on top of the Durahedron, exactly as if it's nested at the same angular degree. It's like, you got to be kidding me, right? And of course, look at the lines going straight through the eye here, the left eye of this baby. Again, a left eye of Horus reference.
Mhm.
And the way his eye is pointed up is pointed straight to this,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? It's like it's coming straight to this center point. So basically, the nesting within this is telling us something about the advancement of our DNA through the holy water,
Mhm.
the holy water, and then and that gives us right 13 plus 8 plus 12 plus 1 equals 34. 2 plus 11 plus 7 plus 14 equals 34. 3 plus 10 plus 6 plus 15 equals 34.
Okay.
16 plus 3 plus 2 plus 13 equals 34. Do you have something, Rob?
No, I was just saying it cut out for a bit. So yeah,
Okay.
carry on. The 34. Yeah.
So 4 plus 15 plus 14 plus 1 equals 34. So this must be 9, right? 9, but it's backwards.
Yeah.
9 plus 6 plus 7 plus 12 equals 34. Now, this is interesting because the 5 is upside down.
Have you got the picture where on the
Yes, I do.
because it's kind of and again it's these signs, right? It's like why is the 5 upside down? That's a key, and then the 9 looks like a question mark. It's like can you crack this code?
Yeah, totally. So you'll notice that the 5 is upside down. So it means it's kind of encrypted. But look, there's a 6 hidden behind it, which is interesting.
It's actually upside down on my screen right now. Or
The
it's
5 is upside down. The 5 should be upside down on your screen.
oh yeah, so it's just flipped. Yeah.
Yeah. So the 6 is right underneath it. So what does this mean? Well, interestingly, you add up all of these, right? And the diagonals also equal 34.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're wondering if the 6 is in there, you just add 8 plus 11 plus 10, right, equals 29 plus the 5 equals 34. So then it must equal 34. So why is there a 6 there? Because that would then equal 35.
Yeah.
Right? So if we add all of this up, 34 plus 34 plus 34 plus 34 equals 136.
Yeah.
But
When
if
we
we add the one that's hidden behind it, the extra one, so instead of using the 5, we use the 6, it all adds up to 137. Which
yeah.
again comes back to Yahweh, the name of God. So we have in the 137 the realization as well that that is Yod He Vav He, right? And so here's this 5 and hidden 6 behind it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing as well, is that when you hit a number that's on a threshold, like a 136, and it's like it's a +1, there's always this secret code where there's like a superposition of like an error correction code often, where it can either be a +1 or a -1 that then completes it. It's a really interesting thing in these enigmas where it's not just if you're rigid with how you look at it, then you'll miss that it sometimes is a 5, sometimes is the 6, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
And
totally right.
that was that huge key that links to the clock again, the 137 degrees on the clock.
Absolutely. So the 137, if we could just look here on Google and see if we can find 137 name of God. So the name Yod He Vav He is the name of God, but geometry and letters and numbers and everything have resonance, so their shapes matter. So this is actually pi, the same shape as pi, and this is 7, but to the 7th power.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pi times 7. So pi times 7 equals 22. Pi to the 7th power equals 3020. That's the number of feet that is the perimeter of the Great Pyramid's base. This comes out to be equal to exactly 1 over 137.
Wow.
Which is alpha, the separation of light from darkness. Again, the name of God. We're talking about a threshold knowledge here of understanding, right? And why are these 3 numbers? There's actually 3 sets of numbers that are like the most important numbers. And the 3 sets of numbers, if I find this,
Didn't you say there was a quote about it being the number that God wrote, or what was it that somebody had a famous quote about it was the number that God pushed his pen to or something?
oh yes, yeah, no, it's Richard Feynman, the physicist, said, we don't know how, we know that God pushed his pencil on, we don't know how he pushed his pencil on this number.
Oh yeah.
It's so enigmatic. I can show you that. That's a Richard Feynman quote.
Hmm.
If you just look up Richard Feynman.
And there is kind of this thing that if you're doing this a lot, you kind of see these numbers kicking up over and over and over again, and then that's when you know that you found a thread. And so that's another thing about pattern recognition, is that you'll see these numbers all adding up together often, and that's the path to start to put more attention on.
Yeah, so for Feynman, you see the magic number is 1 over 137, specifically 1 over 137.035999. And it has been a mystery ever since it was discovered. Feynman wrote, right? And it's like, we don't know how he pushed his pencil. We have no idea where it comes from, right? But it is the basis of Higgs boson. It's the basis of all life. It's unbelievably important, and it is dimensionless. It's a dimensionless, seemingly random, but it's not. It's the 33rd prime number, 137. And interestingly, the peak of the letter A, alpha, it's called alpha. It's literally called alpha. The peak of the letter A on the sarcophagus King's Chamber is at the 33rd inch exactly. So each inch representing on the sarcophagus edge a prime number.
Wow.
The 33rd prime number is 137. So this is not graffiti. I'm sorry. It's like,
And I,
there's no way. It's like ridiculous now even to make that comment.
and
But
like, it's interesting to say that, because obviously all those numbers added to 34, which is the opposite, it's inverse, like -1 to get to
yes.
33. That's
Hmm.
what I'm saying. This +1, -1, there's like a error correction tolerance in like consciousness somewhere, where it's like just above the threshold or just under, and then you complete the pattern.
Because this was the sacred 34th degree, the hidden 34th degree, above the 33rd degree in Royal Arch Freemasonry. That's why they
Oh
encrypted
wow.
it with 34. This was, I put this out on 731, which is 137 backwards in 2021. And I was basically showing that there are three pairs of numbers that have this very, very unique relationship. And it is that you have 137 and 73, 24 and 42, and 57.1 and 175. These are three numbers whose palindrome, that means the same number written backwards, is roughly equivalent to its reciprocal value. So 1 over 137 equals 0.0073, right? It's actually 0.00729,735, but it rounds to 73.
Mhm.
24, 1 over 24 is 0.0416666, repeating, rounding to 42. And the other number that does this is 57.1 and 175. So 1 over 57.1, and this one's perfect, is equal to 175. Now, this is interesting because that actually means, right, that there is a relationship between these numbers, because actually if I take 137 and I divide it by 57.1, guess what the result is? It's 2.4. So
Wow.
these I call them super mirror numbers, right? The super mirror numbers, which by the way, this is the famous constant in physics called alpha. And then 57.1 is the famous, using a decimal conversion, right, is equal to 57.1 is equal to 56 degrees, 71 minutes. That is exactly the omega constant in mathematics.
Oh wow.
So it's omega and omega reciprocal.
Wow. And
So wait a minute. So then if I take this and turn it into an equation, and I use 24 as X because 24th letter in the alphabet is X as well. And the relationship between the two is 24. So if I multiply if I multiply 7, 3, I'll just do this on the calculator so you can see this. So I'm going to take 0.73 multiplied by 2.4, and then multiply that by 0.571. And this becomes literally an equation for alpha chi omega. What's the answer come out to? 1.
Oh wow.
So alpha chi omega is actually an equation of 3 number pairs that multiply together to equal 1.
It's like a trinity into one.
Yeah. And all of this is encrypted right inside of this Albrecht Dürer wooden etch. And I don't even think we figured it all out yet. So
And I was going to say the 42 we found was obviously the rainbow angle in there. So that's got the other magic number.
that's the other thing, is that when I realized that through this, I just wrote an academic paper as a result of it too, realized that 180 degrees, the reason why we have a rainbow angle is 180 degrees minus 137 and a half comes out to 42 and a half, which was directly related, I found, and of course the 42 showing up again, 24 and 42, to something called Snell's window in optics, which if you're a diver under, and you're in the ocean and you look up, you get this weird cylinder or cone above you that you can see the outer world in this circle around you of this certain size, and then everything on the side you just see, you can't see above the water anymore. You can only see below the water, and it reflects back like a mirror. And what I realized was that there was a direct relationship between the golden angle, which had not yet been proven but now is, and Snell's window. And I found it and basically wrote a paper to that effect. And I'll just pull that up real quick.
Yeah, and this was happening live whilst we were doing it.
Yeah, so the new paper is titled "A Harmonic Convergence."
Mhm.
Here it is. Harmonic convergence, geometric resonance between Snell's window and the mean angular radius of the rainbow. Right. So this paper explores a previously unreported harmonic resonance between two distinct optical phenomenon, the critical angle of Snell's window and the mean angular radius of the primary rainbow. Through precise calculations, we show that the complement of the critical angle for total internal reflection at the water-air interface, which is 90 degrees minus 48.6, equals 41.4 degrees, equals the average angular radius of the primary rainbow, which is a mean value of 42 and 40.7 degrees, which is equal also to 41.4. That also relates to duality, because 41.4 is the fractal, the decimal extension part of the square root of 2. Square root of 2 is 1.414. This geometric correspondence, while not causally linked through a traditional optics, presents a striking symmetry suggestive of underlying harmonic principles. We explore implications for classical physics, wave dynamics, and emergent theories of consciousness. And by the way, the relationship here is the refractive index. You can see right here. With the refractive index for water, approximately 1.333. Now, what is that? That is 4 over 3, which is exactly the Caffrey pyramid proportions. And Caffrey pyramid has, for the first time in its history, probably gotten all of the focus the last several weeks
Yeah.
after the Biondi and Malanga, assertions related to what's underneath the structure. But this 1.333 relates to water because it's the refractive index for water, and the proportions of the Caffrey pyramid are 4 for its height, and 1/2 its base is 3, which gives you the 1.333. I have a feeling that this is all somehow related to how we perceive and see the world around us as a pyramid of perception.
And just to say that that is the exact pyramid that's in the etching, right? The 4-3 Caffrey pyramid.
Which etching are you referring to?
The Jura, the image that we looked at.
No, there's no 4-3. There's no, I mean, not that I see there. There's not like a 4/3 relationship inside the Dürer thing, or the pyramid is also in there, but it is hidden within Metatron's cube because it's Metatron's cube that allows you to draw all of the pyramids of Giza Plateau, for
Oh,
sure.
I think I was thinking about the Philosopher's Stone. It's the Philosopher's Stone pyramid
The
that's in there.
Philosopher's Stone pyramid is also in there for sure, and so is Khafre when you look at it from how to find the angles of reference without any measurements that are inside of the the Metatron's cube itself. It's the geometric plan for it, for sure.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, that's such a that whole idea of being underwater and then having this tube perception, and then everything is mirrored. I mean, that's pretty wild. I think that's as like a refraction of water. I think that's going to be something to explore, especially as it's this link that you've now made uh, with the golden angle. I think it's yeah, that's a whole nother. It's like this. We've sort of looked at life through, through the air and through water droplets, but now it's like, how do we see the world if we were in the water itself? Because that's its reciprocal.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting, and I'm super excited to finally figured out some of the meaning, and I'm sure there's still more to it we haven't yet cracked. And but definitely, I'd say in the last month, the amount of information coming in is off the charts. It's the
Yeah,
highest I've ever had. The amount of the denseness, the density of the information coming in is super, super intense. And it seems easier than ever to tap into what's on the other side of veils.
yeah. Those the lunar and solar eclipses, and then this shift in the planets, all shifting into Aries. It's like they went through that 0 point from Pisces into Aries. And so like there's this sort of rebirth, this new energy, and of course Neptune's shifting that way, so the veil is being lifted. So yeah, it feels really good. It feels really good. It feels like there's a new surge. Um, all these secrets underground, under the ocean, how we perceive. It's like we're now seeing the subconscious perception of reality as well.
Well, and people have been saying that somehow pi in a different base numbering system is actually 4, right? And I discovered the way. That's kind of a funny story. I was in Mexico driving with DJ Anna and with Jade, and they were like, "How can you drive and think about all this math stuff?" And this truck pulls in front of me, and it had like on the back window like a 12-digit number, and I was like, "Oh man, this is like a Robert Grant nightmare because I have to figure out why this number is coming in front of me." When you realize that you're in a mental matrix and everything's a synchronicity, if you know there's a synchronicity and you don't figure out the synchronicity, it can be a bit maddening at times.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at this, and they're like, "How can you be driving and thinking about this stuff?" And I said, "Oh, I figured it out." And they're like, "What is it?" And I said, "Oh, that number on the back of the truck is actually pi squared." And it was perfectly pi squared.
And someone had a sticker of this.
And they had it written in paint on the back of their window. And it couldn't be like the price of the car in pesos or something. It didn't make sense. It must have been some sort of telephone number or something, but with extra digits. So I was like, what the heck, man? It's pi squared. And I knew that something was important about that because I've said before, I don't believe that the speed of light is actually the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that what we call the speed of light is actually the speed of our perception. It's the rendering speed in the matrix, right? It's the rendering speed. It's the time it takes for us to recognize something and perceive it. But as we go into the next dimension, the fifth dimensional experience, I believe that the speed of our perception is going to greatly increase. And if you're able to increase beyond the speed of light, then what happens to your perception of time? Remember when Superman flew around the planet faster than the speed of light? And this is based on real physics. If you go faster than the speed of light, you actually make time reverse.
Well, that would make sense. It kind of like when you're on the highway and you see alloy wheel, and at a certain speed they go backwards, right? The actual alloy wheels look like they're spinning backwards. That like the threshold of like the vision and the speed somehow then, like you said, it like starts to reverse the polarity, or seemingly seems to. And so yeah, that's I love that idea, and I totally agree that I think that what we think is seconds was different to what they had as seconds back when they were building the pyramids and beyond. So I think their idea of time was different for sure.
So let's just pull on this string a little bit further, right? How interesting does this get? So if we really think this through, what happens to the speed of our perception? And then I realized, oh, it must be related to the same proportion of what we see in this water of 4/3 and 3/4, which is written in Da Vinci's Encryption of Caffre Pyramid, where I overlaid it with the actual pyramid structure, and where he had inner chambers was matching the actual location of the real inner chambers. Plus, there were more chambers, but we already know he did the same thing with the Vitruvian Man and the Great Pyramid, not Caffre Pyramid. And we know we've found structures now that he said what they were going to be. We know that the next chamber that's already been discovered, its location, is at the throat chakra line, where he placed a line on top of Vitruvian Man. He cut his man into 14 parts, just like Set cut his brother into 14 parts. That was the tell. And also, we know that it's related to this because Vitruvian Man has 3 diamonds on his abdomen that represent the belt stars of Orion as well. And Orion is the constellation of Osiris, right? There's so many cryptography things that are implanted in this and embedded within it that it's kind of beyond any question now. But what was interesting about that is that if you square pi and you square Euler, our whole time relationship today is related to Euler over pi. So Euler over pi gives us 0.865, right? And if you just subtract 1 from that, it comes out to 0.864. And then if you add 1 to the front of it, it's 1.864, both of which are relational to time and the speed of light.
Wow.
So 1.864 times 10 to the 5th power is the speed of light. It's one of the measured values for the speed of light in miles per second. And the number of seconds in one day is 86,400.
The sun, yeah.
Which is also the diameter of the sun, 864,000 miles. So wait a minute. So if we're going to expand to a faster speed of perception, is this going to have an impact, and what's it going to be? Is it going to be exponential? So let's see what happens if we take Euler over pi equals, point, because you have to make the conversion also between sex-adjustable math for Euler, because scalar waves are measured differently than transverse waves are. Scalar waves are in the scalar or compression wave or longitudinal wave category, which requires base 60 math. Whereas transverse waves are based on base 10 math. So the merger of base 10 and base 60, right, is basically the merger of base 10 and base 12 is actually base 60, because that's where you find 60 is divisible by both 5 and 6. Yeah. 5 times 12 equals 60, and 6 times 10 equals 60.
Yeah.
So these are the most highly composite numbers. You can think of it as the opposite of prime numbers. Prime numbers are prime because they have no divisible factors, but the opposite of prime numbers is what I call time numbers, because we use them to reckon time.
Yeah. And that's 60.
They're the most highly composite numbers, the most divisible factors.
And that 60 number, it feels like it's you keep saying, when you were saying about the speed limit, that this 60 number, in everywhere that I've worked with, it seems like it's a limit of the 3rd dimension. So, and multiples of that 60, or the hexagram, or whatever 6 shape that is, the whole 666, this idea of the atoms in the body, like this 6 number feels like the 3D limit. And so then that's the threshold that what do we do to shift into the next one? And you also mentioned about Euler being like a limit field. So like, what do you feel that can, how
Euler and pi, Euler divided by pi is giving us that relationship of time and the speed of light. And remember, The two references for the longitudinal and latitudinal references for the Great Pyramid are literally time and the speed of light.
Mhm.
The latitude is 229.9792458 degrees. The longitude is 31 degrees, 8 minutes, and 3 seconds. One of them, the first one, is exactly the speed of light down to 1 meter accuracy per second. And Larry Paul just wrote a paper on this, proving that as well. And it was published in a peer-reviewed journal. In
Oh, wow,
addition
that's
to
great.
that, the longitude, which didn't even exist when the pyramids were built, turns out to be 1 over pi. And then when you take that, it's 31, so just put in your calculator, 3183. 1 over 3183 equals 314159.
And I think I'll have to check this, but I think that's and this is going to be a mad number. I think that's the amount of seconds in one solar year.
Maybe.
I
don't know this number, so I'll have to go back and check that too.
I've, I've, I've calculated it before, and it's very, very close. So I'll have to have a look at that again. But that would kind of make sense, right? That this speed limit and the sun and the seconds of the day, it's at this threshold. So yeah, it kind of makes me wonder if the sun and our relationship changes, or maybe it's the recognition that we're moving towards Sirius, that central sun relationship changes, and then that's how things speed up or things shift.
Absolutely. I mean, there's that. And also, we know that the 360-day calendar that the Egyptians and the Sumerians used is tied to this base 60 system too. And the reason for this is that you've got a 365, if you include leap year, a 365.4 day year for solar calendar. And for the lunar calendar, it's 354.6. So you add the two together and divide them by 2, and they come out to exactly 360. The mean between the solar year and the lunar year equals 360 days, exactly. We've just been ignoring the lunar aspect of the year.
Yeah.
So there's great wisdom in this. Think of it as two backbone on DNA, because time is also DNA. And the center point of the nucleotide pair that creates it is right at 360.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. But anyway, the point is that if we now take pi and square it, and we take Euler and square it, what's the relationship going to be? Euler squared and pi squared. So if 4 over 3 is pi over, or rather, if pi over Euler equals 1.1547, and then you take its opposite, right? It's reciprocal. Euler over pi equals 0.864, right? 0.865, and then 0.864, you minus 1, and then add 1 to the front of it, is giving us the relationship of time, just like the Great Pyramid does. Its latitude is the speed of light. Its longitude, 31 degrees, and the decimal orientation of that, converting it, is 31 degrees, 0.1342. Divide that by 360 degrees, and you have 0.0864. The same 864 again. So one axis of the Great Pyramid is the speed of light. The other axis is time.
Wow. And that's so beautiful. I'm thinking as well with the dodecahedron, that's 648.
Yeah,
So it's
that's right. It's a permutation of the
yeah,
same number, right? Absolutely.
kind of like
And that's probably why the dodecahedron is considered to be this mysterious thing, right? What does this permutation mean? And this is what Kepler thought about the dodecahedron. But if we look at this in a slightly different way and say, okay, what happens if this really is about human consciousness speeding up, that it can exceed the speed of light, the speed of perception, then you would consider that maybe the relationship, instead of being 0.864, right, for the seconds in a day, then it's going to be Euler squared divided by pi squared.
okay.
And guess what that equals? Oh, we got a thumbs up from the AI. Maybe they're just playing with us. They're messing with us. Guess what that equals? What that equals is 0.75, which is 3 over 4. The same proportions of Caffrey pyramid. It's the reciprocal of the refractive index of water, 1.33333.
Wow. And they're both making the 7, which is the same as that 34 in the magic square. That's a 7. Same as that Yahweh was the 7s. Wow. So here's my
So the speed of consciousness expanding to be able to exceed the speed of light. And it would be roughly, like 3 times as much as the speed of light. Now imagine if all of a sudden your speed of consciousness could speed up to 3 times the speed of light. You could literally, if you could perceive in both ways, the fourth and fifth dimension. The fourth dimension is forward arrow of time. The fifth dimension is the relationship and understanding that time actually flows both directions. It goes forward and it goes backwards at the same time. And if we understood that, then you could control the whole time experience altogether.
I've got a
You're
really
no longer bound by it in the same way.
I've got a fun experiment you can try with this,
Yeah.
showing that it appears as if we're going into like the clockwise and counterclockwise, but it's the same direction. So I always say to people, like, if you take your finger and create a circle clockwise below your eyes, and then when you bring it up over your head and you keep spinning in the same direction and it's now above you, when you look above, it's going counterclockwise. So you haven't changed the direction at all, but you're seeing it from above, below, that procession and precession. So it's really as simple as that. It's actually moving in one direction, but it appears that it's
It's just
traveling in.
like this, Rob.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
You got time flowing one direction, and then the backwards motion of time is the longer precessional cycle. This is procession. This is precession. It's a loop.
That's a hypercube. That's the exact motion of the hypercube, that it turns inside out and then outside in. It's that folding on in upon itself, which is that
Yeah.
whole idea of that your inner world becomes the outer world, the outer world then becomes your inner world. So yeah, that's a beautiful image.
Time flows both directions in procession of equinox, and we go backwards in precession. It's just a longer cycle. Just as you can see here, it's wound tight, more tightly here. 1 degree of the rotation in procession is 1 day approximately, because we have a 365-day calendar, right? And by the same token, you've got the same thing, except that in the longer cycle of 24,000 years, it's 66.6 years
So
for
it's
one
that six,
degree.
that 6 again. You know what this reminds me of?
What's
Apart,
that?
apart from the hypercube, well, we have the 2-strand nuclear DNA, which you could say is the bigger cycle. And inside each cell, you have 2 strands of maternal DNA. So this is like the paternal maternal DNA. You've got the nuclear DNA and the maternal DNA working exactly the same as this process. One's inside the other.
Yep, absolutely right. So I think we're about to start perceiving time differently. Because just like the 100th monkey effect, as soon as one lab rat solves the maze, eventually all the lab rats start to solve the maze all around the world. Because there is a such thing as collective consciousness, collective awareness. So I'm really excited that we found all the 137 references. Of course, that has significance to me. My birthday on leap years is also the 137th day.
That's mad.
So here we go. What a really cool thing. So Albrecht Durer's wooden etch, now at least partially decrypted. I think we'll probably find some more within it. But I think it's telling us about Jacob's ladder up the chakras. And so when we get up to the crown chakra, which is where some people are right now,
Mhm.
once we get there, we have to break through the energetic knot. And there are these knots, and they're called grantis. right? And so you pronounce it differently. You keep calling it grunty, which is like, that drove me nuts when my name was that when I was in junior high, and people would say, "Hey, Robert Grunt."
They're great.
And
They're granted.
yes,
I'm with. I'm with you.
it's and so you didn't even realize that you were like touching on this thing that was like traumatizing for me as a child.
Oh, my bad.
So basically, the grantis, there are three. One is between the root chakra and the sacral.
Mm-hmm.
Another is, and that's called the Brahma granti.
Mm-hmm.
There's one called the Vishnu granti between the solar plexus and the heart chakra, the anahata. And then there's one right before the crown chakra, and it's called the Rudra granti. And Rudra is spelled Rudra, and it's the fierce aspect of Shiva. It's like angry Shiva.
Yeah.
And then it's which would be kind of equivalent to Kali. And the Granti is a knot. So you could say that the universe itself is a knot, right? And that kind of looks like it could be a knot too, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I was just thinking about the ring past knot. It's like a threshold.
Yes, exactly. So the cosmic knot or the cosmic Granti is the universe or the U inverse. And to go up the chakras, you have to have an ego. Otherwise, you may not do it. That's your motivation for going up the chakras, right? Think about it. But then when we finally get to the final door, we have to realize that we're no one. And in realizing that we're no one, we realize that we are everyone. And we are waking in the dream. Just like when I go to sleep at night, I have a dream. Sometimes I have lucid dreaming. Sometimes I don't. When I'm not having the lucid dream, I don't know I'm in the dream. When I am having a lucid dream, I know I'm in the dream. And this happens now more often than ever before for me. It's very rare that I don't know that I'm in the dream.
This reminds me of Ramdas's famous quote of Hanuman, and he says, "When I don't know who I am, I serve you. When I know who I am you." And so exactly that, there's a separation point of like, okay, I'm in service to the divine and this process, and Hanuman the god, he's in service to him. And then but when he remembers who he is, he's Hanuman himself, and it's like you are the collective. And so I feel that it's a really beautiful quote that he shares, and it's like that daily reminder of being in service and then also realizing that you are this wholeness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you realize that you become no one at the moment that you push through the Rudra Granti, or also known as the Shiva Granti. And Rudra is just a reference to Rama, it's Orion. And what we found through all of our work together is that, the story of the Ramayana, as well as the story of Rama and Sita.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, both Rama and Sita are depicted inside of the Orion constellation. The
And
same
see,
story over and over and over again. And it goes all the way up to the merger of Logos and Sophia. Shiva and Shakti are represented by the exact same thing. And it's the same as this logo, too. How funny is that? This is the solid right here.
yeah.
And it represents Shiva and Shakti, the masculine and feminine finding perfect balance. Divinity is not being without darkness. No, divinity is understanding it and accepting it and becoming friends with your shadow and no longer judging it. That's how you change the outer world around you. Stop judging yourself negatively, and you will stop judging the outer world around you. It's not a universe, it's a U inverse. So this same Orion constellation is the Mirgashira, right, which is the deer's head in the Vedic
Mm-hmm.
system. It's represented by Soma. Soma is the deer that was chased by Orion the hunter. What this is actually teaching us is that all the separation that we perceive around us is not separation at all. It's just different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that story of Andromeda that we just spoke about in the podcast, where the sea monster comes, and so she breaks her own chains and befriends and becomes a dragon rider. This integration of the friend as part of yourself, and so then the lower aspect or the subconscious is merged with the conscious, and so that's what I feel is such a strong new narrative in all of this.
No, someone just asked the question, does that mean that time is not an illusion? There's nothing in this world that's not an illusion. This is the issue I have with the flat earth community, right? It's like, why do you guys attach yourself to any one part of this being real? Because none of it is. In my view, like literally not a single tiny bit of it. The only thing that's real is what we feel. It's our emotional states that we're here to actually feel. We are here to feel. So people sometimes get offended when they learn Hermetic wisdom says that the universe is mental because that's not very emotional. No, the entire construct is here so that we can feel. That's the point. That's the entire point of it. And we are all feeding the Akashic record with all of our emotional states, which emotional states are derived from our own conditioning biases and are therefore entirely unique for every one of us. They're all coming from different perspectives. I could go on a roller coaster with someone else. I went with, Michelle Argyris on a roller coaster, and I had a wonderful time. She hated it.
Oh,
Wanted to throw up for 3 days after that.
how big was it?
It was tiny. It was her that wanted to go on the roller coaster, not me, by the way. So she wanted to go on the roller coaster, and I was like, okay, fine. You want to do it? Fine. And then afterwards, she wanted to throw up. So it's like, hey, go on a roller coaster at your own risk type of thing. But the point is this, that we don't experience the universe as it is. We experience it as we are. That's why no glass of wine or any drink or any food could ever be the same for any two people, because your palate is different. It's how you interact with that wine that makes it so unique and different. When we fall in love with someone, we don't fall in love with the other person. We fall in love with who we become in the presence of the other person.
I like that.
This is our experience. This is why Buddha says, I am not what you think I am. Right? You are what you think I am. So the judgments and projections we place on other people and everything around us is really just a thing that we ourselves are that we can't see because we blocked off this subconscious from the conscious mind for the purpose of this experience. And we purposely have amnesia in this game construct in order to have a true and real experience. It would never be fun for you and I to play poker if I was omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. I would not want to play that game. It's a boring game. If we're playing chess, as soon as it's clear that one party is going to win, no matter what the other side does, they call the game.
Yeah.
The game's over at that point.
Mm-hmm.
What we're about to go into, I think, is a dramatic shift in human consciousness, where the people that are awake in their dreams start to realize that the limitations are only self-inflicted and self-imposed. And where we see government and everything else, you're going to see all of these strictures and structures in society, the self-appointed strictures and structures that claim to know what is best for the individual, are going to dissolve.
I like this view that you have, Robert, because I kind of feel like it's from a Vedic position. It's a very unique view, because normally in like Advaita Vedanta, it's like nothing is, everything that you perceive, all the senses, everything else, like none of that, you could say it's all an illusion, for example. So it's what is not, right? Like Shiva, what is not. And then, but there's also this part that you just explained about feeling, which is the tantric path, the feminine path, which is all about everythingness. And it's kind of like this thing of like, well, either everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. And so what you're sharing here, that yes, nothing is real, but actually the real is the tantra of the feeling. And so there's a beautiful weave of like a midpoint there of merging sort of what is not with what is into what you've just explained.
It's funny because we grow up hearing these stories of mythology, right? And we think those are not real. We're taught right away, oh, those are just based on myths, right? The myth means is synonymous with not real. Probably we should change the word myth to archetype.
Yeah, absolutely. The myths, we are the myths.
Right. The changes the meaning of the man, the myth, the legend, or the woman, the myth, the legend. The truth is, I used to look at my world before I went to my spiritual awakening, and I'd say the world I came from was the real world, and I'd come into the spiritual world, and I'd say, oh man, a lot of these people here, they would never make it into the real world. And I know I made a shift when I started looking at it the exact opposite way, where
Mm-hmm.
the new world became the real world.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh my gosh, I was a muggle for a long time.
Yeah, same.
Right, we all
Too long.
were. It's part of the game we designed to play. Right, this game is called Leela, and it's the divine game. And so when you start to realize that, you start realizing that, wait a minute, everything turns upside down, that because the mythologies are the truths.
Mm-hmm.
They're the archetypes of our experience over and over and over again. The patterns, and our lack of discernment means that we're unable to see the patterns of our life replaying and playing and playing over and over with increasing intensity.
Yeah.
So this is the meaning of all of this. The mythologies is the foundational basis. If you watch the podcast we just did on this, I've showed a video in there that shows how the story of Mithra, the story of Jesus, the story of Krishna, the story of Horus are all the same story, born on the same day with 12 disciples, right? I'm not
Yeah.
taking away. I consider myself a Christian. I'm definitely a follower of Christ because he taught the two great commandments, which is exactly what I'm trying to say now. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. And then caveat that with, and judge not, lest you be judged with the same judgment you cast. See the mote in your own eye before seeing it in others.
Mm-hmm.
This is deep, deep wisdom. Once we finally start to understand this, that what we thought was real is not real at all. This is a matrix of mind, and the things that we thought were moral imperatives were simply merely the things that we understood to benefit us the most.
Yeah.
We've been living an entirely self-serving life. That's okay. Self-preservation dictates it so. But now that we're awakened, we can start asking ourselves the question, what do we need in this world? Do we really need a bunch of strictures and structures to tell us what to do, where to be, how to act? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, that's the age of Aquarius. The power goes back to the people, right? Because it's the man and it's the angelic man. So therefore, say that it's not just people, but it's in the power goes back to our highest versions of ourselves that we can be.
Self-sovereignty.
And in the age of Aquarius, the Christ scripture that I think is so undervalued and not spoken of enough, if you want to dive into that side of it, is the Sermon on the Mount was the teaching for the Aquarian age. So he, before he even, left, whether you believe he's a real person or whatever, it doesn't matter. The teaching is there. And so that, I feel, is if you want to look at scripture from that view, that would be the one to give you the blueprint of how we can move into the Aquarian age. And like you're saying, it's not giving a disservice to whatever religion and whatever you believe in, and with me, it's like I can find all of this in the stars. And that used to be a very heady process for people. Like it was just about knowledge. But now we're seeing that the merger of heaven and earth, these stars are our stories. We are living these stories out. This, like you're saying, it's no longer mythology. These are subconscious archetypes that are switching online. And so if we learn the lessons of the stars, we learn how to move forward in our life. And your natal chart is that map. All the decans of astrology, you can find out which decan, which story, which Greek myth, which nursery rhyme. You have them all. And so, whether you're Cinderella, whether you're Humpty Dumpty, like whether you're the Hercules and all the labors, like you will have a specific map from the stars that it's your handbook that you were never
And
given.
it's not only just the astrology, right? It's astrology, it's numerology, it's gene keys, it's human design, it's lost octave, right? Which is what your book is. And now this is all becoming the fifth dimensional aspect of astrology, right? I look at it like this. Number in itself is arithmetic. Number in space is geometry. Number in time is music. Number in space-time is cosmology. And number in time-space, the knowledge that time flows both directions, is purpose. And
Okay.
this is where we are right now. We're finally starting to understand our purpose. So it changes the context of all suffering, because then we realize that, oh, judgment is the source of our suffering, but suffering is a source of enlightening and enlightenment.
And that's where this.
Everything has a reason. I don't even remember my easy teachers in junior high and high school. I only remember the hard ones.
Oh, I remember some easy ones. They were good. but the with astrology, it's interesting that Egypt and the age of Leo is pushing us from the back into the age of Aquarius. So, like you said, we're talking about the age of Aquarius, but actually, what is fueling that is the opposite, right? Is we're actually going backwards in time and reclaiming all of these gifts in the age of the Leo with the pyramids and all of this wisdom, so that we can catapult into this new age. And so, like you're saying, working in both at the same time, both hemispheres, both sides of the body, both masculine and feminine, both ages. So
I'm gonna say something which is kind of interesting. So I don't have a cylinder here, but I got a gift of this Lagavulin, which I don't really drink, but some people sent this to me at some point in time, so I can use it for illustrations at least. So if I'm showing you this side of the bottle and it's showing a shadow on the back wall, if the light is coming from in front of me, you're going to see the shape of a circle on the back wall.
mm-hmm.
So if I asked you, what am I holding? You could say it's something circular.
Yep.
Right? Maybe it's a circle. Now, if I imagine the bottle nose is not on here, but imagine it's like a rectangle, right? And I'm holding it this way, and you're looking at it, and the shadow cast on the wall is a rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
So then you could have another group of people sitting over here, maybe, that would say, no, it's a rectangle. They'd see the shadow cast as a rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I have the higher dimensional knowledge. You can't solve problems, as Einstein said. You can't solve problems by looking at the problem in the same contextual reference as the consciousness level that created the problem or the perception of it.
Yeah.
Higher knowledge, it's a cylinder, right? This is a cylinder. It's both. So you're both right. Good news. You're both right. Guess what? It's also true with 432 hertz and 528 hertz. People argue about that all the time. They're like, oh, no, the 528 is more healing than 432. You should listen to 528, and that's what this is going to be. And then I found out one day, oh, wait, 528 is one of the notes in a 24 note scale where 432 is A.
Mm-hmm.
Both are right.
Yeah.
And
It's
we should be using a 24 note scale, because that unites all the pentatonic scales and all the Western scales. Everything is united under one scale. And by the way, that's what the Egyptians used, a 24 note scale. And the Indians also used 24 note scale. And the Arabic also used 24 note scale. It's one scale. So all of a sudden it's united. These two factions of 432 versus 528 get united into one. Guess what? It's the same with all religions.
Yeah. It's all the same story at the source.
All religions, they all have truth in it, right? Some of it might be just one aspect or dimension of it, so you're only seeing one small part of it or a larger part of it, whatever it is, but they all have truth in them. That's the point. So people ask me all the time, what do you think about Islam? What do you think about, Catholicism? What do you think about this? I think that just like all new technologies, every new technology that comes out will have equal good and equal bad associated with it. And by the way, that's true with all people too. We just can't see it. I'm not afraid of people that have darkness in it. I won't have darkness within them. I'm only afraid of people that believe they have none.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for us to start to accept and realize that we ourselves have our own darkness. It's not by illuminating our lightness in front of everybody else that we get more enlightened. It's by bringing awareness to the dark aspects, the journey within, and learning to fall in love with yourself, which becomes tantamount to falling in love with this lovely, incredible world all around us, just how it is. The moment you want to create heaven on earth, start to become the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah. Or create something that will help to do that. With, if you, like I've found a lot, is that there's a situation I'll see that happens over and over again, a pattern. And I'm thinking, well, what can I do to influence that? And so I know that I have creative ability to create something. So I just created something and I posted it as like a challenge for people. Like, can you share something, or it was, can you relate to someone without expressing about yourself? That was the challenge. Can you relate to someone without mentioning you at all, and just be with them and their story and just listen to them? And people took this challenge up and they were like, wow, they really opened up to me more. And I felt I could listen more, and I wasn't trying to jump in and talk about my story, about how it related. I could hear them. And so that was just something so simple for me, that I just put this like challenge out there, and it started to change people's narrative. And so, yeah, I think you can use your own gifts into the world to put these things out there and, as you say, create something to make the change.
All right, I'll say one other thing, because there's a lot of conversation on here about alcohol and everything. First of all, I don't really drink, but there will be times that I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, when someone offers me a glass of wine or something like that in some social circumstance, I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, I don't drink. I only take psychedelics. Please, bitch, please. Really? I'm so tired of hearing that. I think that's hilarious. But anyway, that's just my little soapbox. It's like, oh no, I'll only do psychedelics because that's good. I know a lot of people that find total escapism in psychedelics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I haven't tried psychedelics. I have. But I'm telling you right now, if you think on your high horse that, oh my gosh, I'm good because I only do psychedelics versus drinking any alcohol, let me tell you something. You are the demon that you perceive. If you think that you're on the highway and all of a sudden you're surrounded by assholes on the highway that are all like on road rage, maybe you're the asshole. Assholes resonate at the frequency of asshole. So they get surrounded by assholes. So if everyone around you is an asshole, then you're the asshole. This, this is life. If you think that everyone around you has got some demon or something, whenever someone says to me, oh, that person's got a demon or something, I start to go, oh man, because that person that's saying that has, in their own mind, created this context of the demon. They become the demon. They don't even realize they become the demon. So my point is this: what you are is what you see in the world around you that you're unwilling to say to yourself. And that's the entire point of this world, is learning to transcend this duality through love and acceptance. So I'm not going to judge someone because they have a glass of alcohol. I don't really give a damn, right?
Yeah.
Anything that you
Enjoy.
repress inside of you is only going to persist even more. Now, am I saying that, sure, there's a such thing as alcoholism, just as there's a such thing as drug addiction. And only you know whether that's going to be a good thing for you or not, or work out for you or not, or what. I've never had an addictive personality, so I've never felt some affiliation to one or the other necessarily. But what I do know is this, that whatever you repress from your experience will only persist.
Mm-hmm.
And it will show up in the world around you until you no longer judge that thing. So if we're here to learn love, then you're going to live an entire lifetime of experiencing no love until you learn to accept no love. You will not find the love you seek. It's through learning to accept the opposites. I knew my goal in life here was to learn unconditional love. And unconditional love has its opposite, which is betrayal, which means I had to experience betrayal many times with increasing severity each time. But it wasn't until I finally learned to accept that betrayal exists. I'm not condoning it. I'm not suggesting anyone, but I used to get triggered by it when I'd hear about it. Never leave a man down. I would get really nuts about it, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until I finally learned to accept that betrayal existed that I could start to understand what unconditional love even means.
And going
Because
back,
that's the nature of unconditional love, isn't it?
yeah, and your story, what you're sharing, is so beautiful because that is in the stars as well. That is this exact story of the demon that is in the stars, Al Ghul, which is the Medusa's head, right? That Perseus has to cut off. But the thing is, why did Medusa become Medusa? Why did she become this head of snakes? Is because she was actually treated really badly, right, by the masculine, and so then she experienced that life, and so she then saw everything through that poison lens, and so she wanted to curse every man, with the snakes, and so in the end, a head cut off, which is the signature of cutting off the ego. And then after that, she was then liberated. And then what came out of her was Pegasus in the age of Aquarius. So there's this exactly what you're saying. That yes, you'll get scorned. Yes, you'll have things happen. But then if you're going to continue to see the world through that lens, then everything turns to stone, like, around you. And then you have to, in the end, your head has to be cut off. And then your soul is finally released. And then what comes out of that is Pegasus. I mean, it's like the most beautiful creature. So yeah, that story, and even alcohol, that is in the stars as well. The demon of alcohol, Al Ghul. That is this whole thing, the witch's head that Orion is stabbing. It's this same thing. And so that's why I say, like, what we experience in our lives is in the stars already. So if we learn those lessons, then we can work with that, and it becomes so much easier.
I just gave my opinion. Someone just asked, what's my opinion on Christianity and Islam? I think I just said it, which is that they're all correct. That's the thing. And the way religion has gone, unfortunately, again, there's another self-appointed. Who are the self-appointed arbiters of what is truthful and not truthful? Who are the self-appointed arbiters of what is moral and amoral? And who are the self-appointed arbiters of what is lawful and unlawful? Well, we have government that determines lawful and unlawful, Supreme Court type of stuff. We have religions that determine what's moral and amoral or immoral. And then the third grouping is what's truthful and not truthful. We have universities. All of those three structures are all going away. They're all going to dissolve. Trust me, it's happening. It's absolutely happening. And it couldn't happen soon enough, thankfully. But the truth is that there is truth in all of them. But what happens is someone comes along like Muhammad, or someone comes along like Jesus, and he says, look, love everybody. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Don't judge anyone. I heard something today that was pretty funny. I think if Jesus were to come here today, he would probably say, why in the heck are you guys still talking about me? This is supposed to be about you. He was trying to tell everyone, you are all combined with the Father. I and my Father are one. So are you. That's what he was teaching. He was teaching not about his superpowers. He was teaching about all of our superpowers. And what happens is afterwards, someone comes along and says, oh, we need to find a way to bottle this up because we're going to turn it into a business somehow. And we'll basically make this it's like selling water. Water is the most abundant resource on planet Earth. Let's make it super valuable by making it scarce. Let's bottle it up and we'll tell everyone that it's running out. Clean water is going to be running out, like clean air is going to be running out. Let's bottle it up and sell that shit. So what happens then is like, oh, it's even better than selling water or air. Although you could buy air in Bhutan, because they have this mountain air. They actually make you pay for breathing the air there. It's quite funny. It's like an extra tax. But now the cheapest thing with the lowest cost of goods sold is religion. It's spirituality. Let's bottle that shit up. Let's claim proprietariness on it so that every church says only our church is true. I don't believe that. There's truth in all of them. They're all based on the same mythos, the same stories. literally just told different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this is dissolving too. But spirituality is going to abound, and love will abound, and acceptance will also abound in the age of Aquarius, along with that rebellion and sovereignty of self-sovereignty will abound. That is what will be the difference. The enslavement of humanity is a self-imposed enslavement. Our consciousness can only expand to the volume of the container or the cage of our belief systems.
Sounds like an equation.
If you think you can or you think you can't, you will be right. So I'm not going to sit here and say one religion is good and another religion is bad. Just like I'm not going to say one technology is good and another technology is bad. All new technology comes with an equal bag of good and bad. And all human beings come with an equal bag of good and bad. Everyone, it's a function of physics. You cannot have light without darkness. Darkness is not the absence of light. It is the absorbed condition of light's reflection, period. That's a physics statement that I'm making. And once you realize that, then you realize, oh, some people realize they have darkness and other people don't realize it. It's just different scales on the stages of their progression. And hopefully, as you go through life, you can start off life over here, which is when you're born and you get separated from your mother. And then you get to life over here, and it represents a stage where hopefully you've achieved a degree of self-love and love of others, because the two reasons why we're here is to learn how to love and how to be loved. And all of your relationships along the way are reflecting your stage of where you are in that moment in time of how you perceive yourself. So how you get treated by people outside of you is actually how you would treat yourself if you were outside of you. If you have negative self-judgments of yourself, guess what? That's how you're going to get treated by the other people in your life. And as you finally start to love yourself more and more, you can finally find the relationship that matches the coherence of your frequency of resonance. Humility will attract humility. Humility will perceive humility. Arrogance will perceive arrogance. Piousness will perceive piousness. It's a function of sympathetic resonance. If you're resonating at the frequency of asshole, you will attract assholes.
It's knowing that the beggar is the Buddha, right? But you wouldn't see that unless you were at the level of the Buddha. So there's this like, otherwise you treat him as a beggar. The whole time people are treating this guy as a beggar, and he's there, and he's the Buddha, and only the person that is that resonance can see that, right? And so this is this beautiful thing, like you're saying, of these frequencies. But that is the age of Aquarius. That if there's a word for it that I would say for me, it's reconciliation. It's the blending of the polarities. That is what I would say is the age of Aquarius word for me.
It's the blending of polarities. It's the yin yang and balance. And then the third aspect comes out, which is a trifold, a trimurti,
Mm-hmm.
a godhead, the divine. The square root of 2 is the essence of duality. The square root of 3 is the essence of the Trinity. But the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3 equals pi. So now you've got a diameter of 1 and a circumference of pi, which is comprised of the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3. When we don't have the context of the divine aspect, we look at the square root of 2 and we say, oh, that makes the whole musical scale because the diminished fifth and augmented fourth is the square root of 2 times a unison note,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then when you realize, wait a minute, with the context of the square root of 3, if I add those two together, how many degrees of that circle would be related to the square root of 2, or my suffering? Because we think of the square root of 2 as the essence of suffering, the difficulty in life, the lack, the scarcity, all of that. Well, guess what? If you take a circle with the circumference of pi and the component of that circle that's the square root of 2, which is 1.4142, and the square root of 3 is 1.73205,
Mm-hmm.
the component of that circle that is the square root of 2 is exactly 161.816 degrees.
Wow.
161816. That's a double mirror inside the number of the golden ratio, because the palindrome of the golden ratio is 0.618. No, rather the reciprocal of the golden ratio of 1.618 is 0.618. So it's the only number that has the same exact number as decimal extension as its reciprocal, and it only has one change in the front by adding or subtracting one. So the golden ratio minus one is equal to 1 over the golden ratio. Therefore, that's the equation for grace. Golden ratio minus one is equal to 1 over the golden ratio. It's a karmic mirror. So when we look at this and we say, so the suffering, which is associated with lead, and even the square root of 2 looks like the symbol in alchemy for Saturn. So the lead turns to 161.816 degrees, which is golden ratio, golden number. Suffering turns to gold. With the context of the divine Trinity, the Trinity. So all religions have this basic level of truth within it. They all, when they're teaching love and acceptance, all the things that Christ actually taught, that they're absolutely in their Christos. And Christos is just a reference to crystal consciousness. And that's what Aquarius is going to be all about. And I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I love Jesus Christ. I accept Jesus Christ as being a great ascended master who, like all of us, is the Son of God. Every one of us is. No one of us is not. And if you think that you in your imperfected state could never think about yourself in the context of divinity, the divine aspect being the square root of 3, you could never put yourself in the context of that divine aspect because you're imperfect and you're full of sin and you've done these things wrong and et cetera, et cetera. But you can see how nature is beautiful and nature has the signature of God within it, and God is in all of that, but it can't possibly be in me. Then you're on an ego trip. Because you too are the same as everybody else. And for you to separate yourself out that way is the ego trip. Believing that you're God is not the ego trip. If you believe that you're God and no one else is, that's probably an ego trip. But if you believe that everyone is divine and that God is in everything and is all around us as breathing and consciousness exists in and of itself, that is divine. God is in the darkness as much as he is in the light. And it's not a he or a she. It's both. And once we finally learn to blend these things into one, then we start realizing the Trinity. You know, there's only one time that 1 and 1 actually equals 3. And that is one line with a vector, right, and an angle on it connected to another line. Because the third line becomes already implied. So two sides, right, one side plus another one side equals a triangle. It's already there. It's as easy as that for us to decide our own divinity and to realize that we have so much more purpose for being here than we ever thought or knew. And no one of us is any better than anyone else. Some are just more aware of their darkness. And the more aware of your darkness you become and accept, not to go and do bad actions and condone bad actions, but to actually understand that it is you, the more divine you become.
Yeah, beautiful. It reminds me so much of Ramana Maharishi about this whole idea of you're saying if you don't feel that you're the divinity. And he had one guy come to him and he was like, oh, I've been an adulterer. And he's like, what should I do about it? You know, master, what should I do? And he says, think about it no more. And it's like, and obviously it's not this idea of bypass, but it's this sense of if you're going to keep telling yourself that you are this adulterer, you're not going to move anywhere. So his instruction was scrap it, like start today fresh, like all of that you've had before, that you've coming to me saying, how do I work with this? How do I do it? He's like, get rid of it. Just start and see who you are and start again. And I kind of like that idea that this is a fresh start. this Aquarian age is a fresh start for the whole of humanity. And we are living these star stories. We are in this motion. And by the way, that spring equinox we just had, although we can say we're in the age of Pisces, what I noticed in the star map is that, yes, on the eastern horizon, we're in the age of Pisces. And that was what you would mark the time as. But if you follow directly upwards without changing the variable angles, we are both, like you're saying about both, we are both in the age of Pisces and in the age of Aquarius, because the stars don't have these boundaries of there's that degree and then it stops and then there's another degree. They overlap each other. And so you'll actually see Pegasus, it'll be upside down,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see Pisces, and Pegasus is right above it. So it's only because it's just on the horizon point that it makes it Pisces. But if we were to move it upwards directly, we are also in the age of Aquarius. And so, and we have quite some time, like easily 500 years. So we've just wanted this one boundary to say, now we are in this age. But the stars don't work like that. They're overlapping. And so we've been blending and merging over the last 500 years. And now it's becoming, we're at the very end. We're in the circle in Pisces. There's a circle. And we're in the last circlet of Pisces. But right above, we are already in Pegasus.
The transition's already well begun. We're definitely in this transition, but it's not like we're going to entirely leave behind everything, right? It's like, as he says, it's we're still going to be there. But again, as soon as you realize your North Node, then your precessional experience goes to the Vedic. And I strongly believe that. I explained that in the podcast that I had with you as well. And that the tropical is what we experience until we have or so rather it goes the other way around. The procession goes to Vedic, and the precession goes to tropical. And until that moment where you realize your North Node and what your North Node is, and I'm already seeing all my transits, it's definitely shifting now, like in a massive way. So you go from tropical astrology for your procession. Again, it's another one like 432 and 528. No, it's Vedic. Sidereal. No, it's tropical. No, you're both right. Right? You're both right. That's the thing. It creates a crisscross. So as we go into, and I did explain this in depth with Jai Gobind in the podcast I did with her as well. But basically, as we go into our North Node and recognize what our North Node is, our transits all start transitioning towards the Vedic system. So, for example, in tropical, I have a sun in Taurus, my moon is in Gemini, my Mercury is also in Gemini, and I have my Venus in Aries. But now, the transition, because I've realized my North Node transit, and I'm starting to embody that North Node transit, now my moon goes into Taurus from Gemini. My Venus goes into Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
And my Mercury goes into Taurus too. So I become a triple Taurus. So this is the transit that's happening. Now, by the same token, until now, right, I've had my chart that's been more accurate has been tropical. And on the precession, my precession has been sidereal. But now it flips, where my procession becomes sidereal and Vedic, and my precession becomes tropical. So it's like an X. It literally creates an X. And this is why. Why is it 24? I just showed you guys that 24 is the number that unites 137 of alpha and omega, right? Alpha chi omega is an equation that equals 1, right? 24 is the degree offset for Vedic and sidereal astrology versus tropical. And
Yeah.
and that's what's happening. You're moving into your divine aspect. And as you move into the divine aspect, your divine version of you becomes the Vedic and sidereal transit for you. Whereas before that time, before you realize that divine aspect, you're in tropical. And your precessional context, the backdrop of all of it, is going to have been in the sidereal, but then it moves to tropical. So that gives you that offset. So it basically pulls forward for those that moved into that divine aspect in the North Node. It pulls forward their experience of Aquarius much sooner, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what
Especially with 24.
happens. So this is where, you know, the whole point that I'm making, and I'll just finish with this because I do have to go, but heaven and hell is right here on earth.
Mhm.
I know people that live a heavenly life right now. I know people that live a hellish life. And I can tell you right now, it's more fun to live the heavenly one. The hellish life is the life that's based on judgment. It's the life that is not transcendent, that is unable to let go of things. It's the hellish life that decides to choose being right over loving and expressing love. That destroys more relationships than anything else. When you choose to be right over loving, that's not ascended. It is ascended when you choose to love over being right. It's more important for you to express love than it is to be right. And so, just to leave on a funny, humorous note, I was at a house a couple days ago, and I went to the bathroom, and this was on the bathroom wall, right above the toilet. It said, "Let that shit go. Let it go."
There you go, man. And by the way, you and me have the same North Node.
Pisces.
Yeah, Moon for Taurus.
Hmm.
So we have exactly the same. So we're like it's like the mission is like converting, and we are aiming for the same direction. So yeah, super
It's
interesting.
funny. Even the word Maya is just I am backwards. In many languages, Yah is I. Maya backwards is I am.
That's all we're gonna realize, man.
Thank you very much. Great to see you, my friend. Been fun
Yeah,
cracking this and decrypting
yeah.
this Albrecht Dürer
I look forward.
wood etch.
I look forward to the next enigma and to dive deeper into this one. But yeah, that was super cool, and that was like 4 or 5 hours of blitzing through that one. So yeah, congratulations. That's a super great find in that, and yeah, a lot of work goes into figuring these things out. So that's a beautiful treasure to have.
Yes, I recommend Jai Gobind. She can do your chart and actually combine it with gene keys and human design. And hopefully one day, not too distant future, she'll also integrate the lost octave.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys. Have a good one.
Cheers, man.
Bye-bye.